Hey, happy President's Weekend. It's Nutball Cop. I've seen this video posted between Substack, Blue Sky, and YouTube Shorts about 10 times this late in the week and this weekend. And this is a Paul Harvey moment. There's more to the story. And now for the rest of the story. Let me play some of this video to you and kind of explain an expanded background on why this bullshit is happening.
Street in Bedford County where Ron LaFlamme became number 41.
I was surprised when he started asking me to do a sobriety test.
Not the 41st person to be arrested by Trooper Asa Pearl for DUI, the 41st to have that DUI ultimately dismissed.
It was wrongful arrest.
Okay, I'm going to interject right here. If you have more than one or two, one or two is just mistakes. You could have misread something in the field sobriety tests. The person could have been of diminished capacity or having medical problems and it was misinterpreted. So could you have a sober DUI arrest? Yes, you can. Okay. Can you have 41 of them by the same person? No, you can't. That's not a statistical aberration. That's telling you there's a deep underlying problem that goes well beyond training and personal conduct, and I'll get into that in a moment.
And oh, don't get me going.
In fact, word was getting around Bedford County about Trooper Pearl's DUI dismissal rate.
I know that during the time that Ron's case was making its through the court, Ron's case was not the only one with this particular trooper where blood results were coming back negative.
But finding proof of all those dismissed DUIs wasn't easy. No mention of them in Pearl's personnel file.
Okay, here's a couple of clues. 22 absolutely sobers by breathalyzer and follow-up blood test. That's a massive red flag. Again, one or two total throughout a career may happen for extraordinary circumstances, exigent circumstances. But 22 sobers and 41 bad arrests, all in DUIs by the same guy, there's more to the story.
And so we filed an open records request with the Bedford County Clerk and found these dozens of DUI arrests dismissed, all made by Trooper Pearl between 2021 and 2024. Then we obtained this, a spreadsheet put together at our request by the Bedford County DA's office, explaining why each DUI was possibly dismissed. Here's what it shows. In 8 of the cases, including Ron's, the drivers had neither drugs nor alcohol in their system. In 14 other cases, the driver's blood alcohol level was within legal limits and no drugs were found. And that adds up to 22 cases where Pearl arrested someone for DUI and they were sober.
That's bad. And I don't think civilians understand how bad that is. He was told to do something that had nothing to do with actually identifying intoxicated drivers. And I'll get into why I think that. They just wanted to punish people at large based on ideology. We'll get into that.
I don't even take prescription drugs. I take one vitamin a day.
The other 19 DUIs dismissed are just as confounding. Look, several cases had to be dismissed because Pearl was no longer available for court or couldn't recall the events of the arrest. And we wanted to talk to Pearl about all of this. Why so many sober DUIs on the streets of Bedford County? Why was he not available for court or couldn't remember details? But Pearl never responded to our emails or calls.
Okay, there's several things going on here. Let me tell you the rest of the story. In this region, Tennessee, Kentucky, we've already got a problem that was exposed about 18 months ago where some bad training and some bad legal advice had occurred and some moron behavior was enabled, where they were convinced that all DUIs were on marijuana and opioids. Therefore, the breathalyzer test for alcohol was no longer required or needed. Not even the portable breathalyzer as a screening. They stopped using them. They refused to use breathalyzers, accusing every single driver they stopped of being intoxicated by a non-ethanol intoxicant. Um, as an expert in DUI and 23-152 A, B, and C, and 11-550 health and safety, being intoxicated by narcotics in public, 90% of your arrests behind the wheel for intoxication are ethanol. Any other claim otherwise is either um, broken ideology for PR sake, for authoritarian PR sake, or it's just an idiot with a badge. There's no fucking way you're going to get that many opioid and weed um, DUI arrests. That's just not a thing. Now, in addition to, they were convinced that everybody's a heroin addict. Remember, we didn't want to hold the Slackler family, Purdue Pharmaceutical. No one actually got held criminally responsible for the opioid epidemic. But we're going to start arresting working class, middle class drivers because everybody's a dope fiend. Even when you're sober, you're going to get arrested. This sound familiar? Even if you're a legal resident, even if you've got your paperwork, even if you're a U.S. citizen, you can be arrested by ICE. ICE didn't think up this shit. Okay? The authoritarian shit started years ago. Your local police with the police tank were ICE before the dickheads in ICE came out onto the streets. Okay? There's another side of the story, too. It was in Kansas. A federal judge called it the Kansas two-step. A lot of your right-wing sheriffs and your right-wing attorney generals in your red states do not like the fact that federalism exists. They feel their laws are the laws of every other state. In Kansas, they didn't like California, Oregon, California, etc., legalizing cannabis, marijuana, THC, okay? So they decided that they were going to stop every single car with plates from a legalized cannabis state and search their vehicles. Does this sound familiar? Does this sound like a pattern of behavior? Yes, it does. Okay? According to the mind of the right-wing authoritarians, which unfortunately not just is Trump and Miller and Bannon and Noem and Holland and Bovino and Kash Patel, that useless twat, okay? Down to the patrol officer literally thinks you're the enemy drug fiend driving a car and you should be punished because I have an ideology. I have an empty accusation. I don't need evidence. Okay? Because when he didn't show up for dozens of cases because he couldn't remember the case or he had insufficient forensic evidence, which means they didn't have any test results to support the DUI. He was unable. Now, I've gotten 23-152A convictions, the non-tolerant drunk, which means they weren't above 0.08, the legal limit, but I still arrested them for DUI because they were still obviously intoxicated. This happens usually with teenagers. Somebody who doesn't usually drink, they have a couple of drinks and it hits them really hard and they get really tipsy on a very small amount of alcohol. Okay? So even if he didn't have a legal limit, if he had the correct observations, he would be able to secure a DUI based on any alcohol or any intoxication in the system. He couldn't do this. He had sober drivers, chemically sober drivers, and then the other drivers, he didn't even have any observational evidence to show that they were DUI. So what he did was commit false arrest at least 41 times. Why did he do it? This is the point I want to make it clear. Because authoritarianism and bullshit and proud baby twat boys are replacing law enforcement. They don't care if you're guilty or not guilty. They don't even give a remote shit. Their sheriff, their lieutenant, the retired captain that walked indoor this week for a training seminar, which he's making money on, everybody's a dope fiend. Arrest everybody, sort it out later. These are fishing expeditions, as we used to call them back in the day. They're completely invalid. They're total horseshit. And they're not isolated to one state trooper named Pearl. Okay? They've in Kentucky, in Tennessee, and other states, they have found out there's hundreds, if not 1,000 DUIs that have been arrested sober because there's an ideology where everybody we pull over is a dope fiend. Everybody's, smoking cannabis behind the wheel. We don't need observations to prove it. We don't need a breath test to prove it. We're just going to arrest you anyways. Just like ICE arrests legal residents and U.S. citizens and throws them in gulags. Okay? I've been telling you for years now. Dear Leader and his fucking ilk, his moron fucking orbit, have never thought up a single thing on their own. They're just copying the bullshit that's already here. And one of the shit that's already been playing for years is local right-wingers deciding they are the Stasi even before they could think up ICE. And they're going to do warrants, do searches without warrants. That happened well before ICE. We're going to execute daytime warrants at night, completely illegal, completely against the Fourth Amendment, completely against SOTUS decision. We don't care. It's our ideology that's beneficial. Remember Breonna Taylor? Okay, that was well before ICE. We got a bigger problem in law enforcement than ICE. That's what I'm saying. Okay? Because they're being trained that they don't need to follow the law. There is no constitution. Everybody's a dope fiend. Therefore, just sweep them up. Okay? Arrest the usual suspects. Okay? The reason I wanted to talk about this meme is so popular, and the feedback I'm getting is like, here's a comment. Was Pearl himself UI under the influence? This isn't about Pearl. This is about one guy. This sober arrest thing has happened 1,000 times. There's also been parallel intrusions and anti-constitutional behavior by cops, simply based on ideology, not the law. That's why I'm telling you, you need to get out and vote. You need to be independent. You need to vote independent. Because with more independents in, the less of this left-right orthodoxy where we just ignore police chiefs and sheriffs sending their troops out in the street to do this bullshit. And it's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It serves no law enforcement purpose. It's immoral, it's unethical, and back in my day, we would call this a set of chicken shit arrests. It ain't good police work. Okay? Think about it.